We're going to start again. So this is Getting Around in My World, and I'm Drew Nagel, and my co-presenters are Donald Thomas on my right, Frank Notaro on my left, and we're here today to talk about all the issues that come up after a brain injury that affect where a person may choose to live and how they may get around in a world that they live in. Oftentimes, people need to find a different way to get around in the world that they live in due to some symptoms or impairments that result from a brain injury. And they could include problems with vision, reaction time, problem solving. Anybody here have any of those issues? So there are those issues can really then pose difficulty with the traditional way that people get around, which is driving a car, right? So if you should not be able to drive a car after a brain injury, there are other ways to approach that. So there are disabled driving programs that can sometimes provide driver training in the areas that have been affected by the brain injury. But sometimes even the driver training program cannot fix the issue because, for instance, if the state requires that you have 140 degrees of intact visual field and you have a hole in that visual field from your brain injury, that's not something a driver training program can solve. Okay? So there are many people, though, who are not driving, who have found other ways to get around in their world, including what we have here on the screen. Walking, using buses, trains, ride shares, paratransit, and others have changed where they live so that they can access those kinds of ways of getting around. So today we're going to explore how my two co-presenters here, Donald and Frank, have learned to incorporate all of these ways of getting around in their lives, how it has affected the choices of where they live, but how it has not limited them in terms of what they do. They're doing the things they want to do in their life. So we hope you'll come out of this session optimistic about the possibilities once we fully explore all the different ways there are of living in the world. Are we good with the virtual audience? Okay. So there's a couple of key concepts that I want us to consider when we talk about maximizing the ways we get around in the world. One is to maximize and optimize your participation in the world. So in other words, we don't want people to feel limited or held back in what they do in their everyday life just because maybe they can't drive a car anymore. Everyone, every one of us deserves the chance to have a meaningful and productive daily activity pattern. You need to be able to get out and do what you want to do in your life. Okay? If your brain injury has changed the way that you get around in your life, then you may need to find other ways. And your rehab should really be focused on helping you with that. Come on in.
Just go.
Plenty of seats. Choose the best seats. There's a lot to choose from. So you might even find that it could be more economical to use some of these alternative ways of getting around compared with the cost of owning and operating a farm. Our society, in America at least, has placed a very high value on driving. Not all societies do that, by the way. Other societies are more focused on developing alternate transportation methods in their cities. For instance, my son lived in Tokyo for 5 years, and he never owned a car, he didn't even have his driver's license for that matter, but he does now, Mary Farrar. But he got around for all 5 years using rideshare, bus, trains, subways, high-speed bullet trains. It never limited him. He went all over the country without having to drive. but our American society places a high value on driving, and we kind of grow up with that. So it can take some adjustment to think about, how do I make my life without driving a car? But it can, you can be just as independent, but by using different ways of getting around. So before we take a look at each of these alternative ways of getting around, I would like to get a snapshot of each of our co-presenters, and who better to tell you about themselves than them. So, Donald, would you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Yes, I will. My name is Donald Thomas. Prior to my accident, I've been employed with the Philadelphia School District for 20 years. During this time, I was also chairman of the trustee board of my church and was responsible for financial decisions. I had a large support system, numerous friends, was in a long-term romantic relationship. I owned my own home and lived independently. I also traveled as often as I could. In January 2001, the car was a passenger in was struck by another vehicle fleeing the police. My older brother was killed instantly, and I was pronounced dead at the scene. I revived several minutes after this, and determination was to transfer me to the nearest hospital. I was in a coma for nearly a month, had over 20 surgeries, was diagnosed with traumatic brain injury. I was not able to return home for almost 6 months after the accident, and only then with 24-hour supervision. How my brain injury impacted me more than over 20 years since the accident? I have no memory of the accident. I'm unable to work. I tried to return to work, including having a job coach, but was unable to maintain the position following several health complications. Due to short-term memory issues, I developed OCD-like symptoms. Of checking and rechecking household risks, such as the oven and locking the door. All in all, I do not feel safe living on my own. Fortunately, I continue to have a strong support system, actively engaged in my church, and no longer in a leadership position. I still travel.
Donald, can I ask you some follow-up questions?
Yes, you may.
Okay, so tell us where you live now.
I live in South Philadelphia.
Okay, and what are the primary ways that you use to get around in South Philadelphia?
One of the primary ways is the fact I do a lot of walking now, with my cane, of course. We do a lot of walking around the city, but also I take a lot of public transportation also to get around with that. That's great also.
Yeah, so, and tell us a little bit more about your role with the church. I know you're not in the leadership role, but you do other stuff with them, right?
Yes, we do a lot more with the church. Because we have next to our church community center, which is funded by the church, and they have a nice support system where they feed, I would say, about 60 to 80 families a week with food bags. So we come and store the bags and make sure they have enough supplies to last like that also for a period of time. So I enjoy that also too, doing those things. Very helpful.
Yeah, so how do you get to go to do that work?
I walk also.
You walk to there,
Yeah.
okay.
About 25 minutes walk from my house.
Uh-huh. So these are not short walks. I think why Donald is so thin. But you don't just travel around South Philadelphia. You like to go other places too, don't you?
Yes, I do, exactly.
Like, where do you go besides Philly?
Well, on a good day, we like to go on vacations too. So we travel to actually sometimes Washington, D.C., and sometimes New York. And for a nice summer vacation, we went down to Disney.
Oh, yeah.
And that was great. We did all traveling by transportation with the train also.
So all those places you can get to by the train?
Yes,
You even went to Disney by train?
yes. First class, yes. I love that, because you get actually get a park to sleep in, and they serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I enjoyed that immensely. So it's quite nice.
Sounds good to me. And then once you got down to Disney, how'd you get around? Because Disney's huge.
Exactly, a Uber driver. We lived, and we stayed at the Disney Resort also. So that was good also, so that worked out quite well for us.
Yeah. So what special techniques have you developed that help you not to worry when you leave the home? I'm really interested in that, like the OCD tendencies you mentioned. What do you do?
Well, I was always concerned. I was going back and forth and checking the house periodically, making sure the stove was off, I locked the front door. So what I started doing now was taking a picture of it. And I take a picture of my camera, and that way, as I leave the house, I still have the anxiety of checking again. So when I go back to the cell phone, see the picture of it, and know everything's concerned like that also, everything's in order. So the picture's worth 1,000 words, in other words.
That's a great way of doing it. That's great. Yeah. And there's other things you like to do, like for entertainment, you like the theater?
Yes.
Where do you go to the theater?
Well, it's walking distance from my house also, and I enjoy that too, because while it's such a congested area leaving the field and trying to travel with the cars and getting home on buses, we can walk right there also. So we're not too far from South Broad Street also, so we can go to a lot of the shows and things also, so it's walking distance from my house.
You're in a pretty good location, aren't you? You can get to a lot of things.
Yes, that area is quite uprising, very good also, very, very good.
And how did you get here today to this conference?
I walked.
Why am I not surprised? Okay, thank you, Donald.
You're welcome.
Good for you.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. On November 11th, 1991, my life changed in an instant. I was 13 years old, sitting in the back seat as we traveled on a snowy night in the Poconos. Not wearing my seatbelt, I leaned forward to join the conversation in the front. My sister turned to me and said, "It's 10:10, Frankie, make a wish." Moments later, everything changed. A drunk driver hit us head on. I was thrown from the car with the impact fracturing my skull. Though I don't remember much of the night, I've been told that my sister's boyfriend at the time held my head up while my sister tried to reattach my ear. I had technically died on the scene, but thankfully, thanks to a nearby ambulance, the EMTs arrived quickly and were able to resuscitate me. I spent the next month and a half in a coma. I briefly regained consciousness, and before I slipped into another coma, my liver was failing due to hepatitis, and I was out for about another month and a half. When I regained consciousness, things were much different. I didn't recognize anyone except for my sister Dawn, and consequently, that's who I called everyone. My recovery was incredibly challenging. I had to relearn how to walk and perform basic tasks. I thought things I had once taken for granted were now a severe struggle. At the time, there wasn't much known about brain injury, and I was told I had maybe 1 or 2 years to recover whatever I could. Despite the dim prognosis, I didn't give up. Over the years, I discovered support groups and resources that helped me realize there was more I could do. These connections were life-changing. That's why I've become so actively involved with the Brain Injury Association of Pennsylvania. I now volunteer through multiple programs, and I work part-time on a study. A few years ago, I had no job, just my therapist. But I kept pushing myself to do more, little by little. And today, I'm living independently and giving back to the brain injury community. The journey hasn't been easy, but I've learned that no matter the challenge, you can't give up. I always say, do what you can until you can do more, then do more. I'd like to think my life is proof that recovery is possible and there's always hope, even after the toughest setbacks. Thank you.
Can I ask you a little follow-up?
Of course.
Where do you live now, Frank?
I live in Bensalem now.
Ben Salem, so that's kind of like outside the city, right?
Yeah, very much.
Okay. Well, what are the primary ways that you get around, say, in Ben Salem?
I walk a little. I take public transportation a lot via bus, train, Uber or Lyft, paratransit, you name it. Depends on the situation.
Right. So, and can you tell us a little more about the kind of things you do for the Brain Injury Association?
Sure. I'm ambassador to, I'm an ambassador, I'm with the ambassador program for Moss and St. Mary's. And I am a volunteer with the Brain Injury Resource Line. There's more. I'm a volunteer on the advisory board, the Brain Injury Advisory Board. And I actually,
You're a paid employee.
and, well, you said the volunteer stuff.
Oh,
But, and, yes, also I have a part-time job. That's my paid employee.
As a researcher,
Yes.
right? In any of those roles, how do you get to the work?
Thankfully, it's all virtual.
It's all
Ah.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah.
Because we learned how to work virtually. And a lot of those roles would have been in person.
Yeah, the ambassador program that you helped start up, was supposed to be that we go in person. And I lived right by Moss at the time. So we were supposed to do that, but then COVID happened, we couldn't do it. And thankfully, we don't have to now because I could never get out there.
Yeah.
Well, I could, but it would take a good minute.
But one of those volunteer roles does involve travel, participating on the Pennsylvania Department of Health Brain Injury Advisory Board. So tell us about how you get to that. Where are those meetings and how do you go?
They're in Harrisburg every 3 months. I take a Lyft or an Uber, whatever's cheaper, to get to said train station. And then I have a ticket that Nicole from the Department of Health, she gets my tickets ahead of time. And so that's all paid for. And any expenses that I incur are reimbursed. So it's great. And I feel that there's so much more involved in the know. And it's honestly, these volunteer things, they helped me beyond what I'm able to help them. And
Would it be fair to say that because of those volunteer things, you found out about the paid work?
oh, yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I wouldn't have that job if I wasn't for the volunteer thing. I feel like that first interview was almost a pity interview, and I don't know how I got the job.
Well, and it's not just all work, Frank. It's not just all work. What do you like to do for fun?
I love comedy. I'm a comedy junkie, as I tell people all the time. And there's a lot of stand-ups that perform in and around Philly.
Yes.
Now that I have the extra money, thank you, paid job, to go to these things, I do as much as I can. And yeah, I was in Philly last weekend. I actually have tickets tonight. But
How do you get to the comedy club or wherever you go?
because I'm in a rural area and I would have to transfer, I take what was known as CCT, what is it? SEPTA access now. And yeah, so it's all set up. The ride's all set up ahead of time. They come and get you at a certain time. They meet you at your door. drop you at their door. It's easy breezy, so you don't have to worry about having any brain thoughts, any, confusion. Like, yeah, because that happens sometimes. I'll get
Yes.
confused and I'll get off the wrong stop at something. Yeah, so you have to, just pivot. It's easy when you're in the city, but when you're in a rural area, these trains don't come every 10, 15 minutes. They come once an hour. So you got to know where you're going. So planning is so key.
So the stuff to access CCT, it's door to door is really good. So what does it cost you?
Most it goes up to is $5. That's how I got here today, and it would have cost me, cheapest I would have gotten is about $70 to get it.
On the Uber?
Yeah. So
Not a bad deal.
I'll take it.
But you say it requires some planning and
Sure.
organization. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah, you can't, like with Uber and like the paid things like that, you could plan your trip in advance. And so you have that ease of mind, but you cannot do that way in advance with CCT Act, whatever it is. And because it's only 3 days ahead, 3 days ahead you can plan. So you have to, so what I do is I set a reminder for 3 days ahead of time, I got a call to get to this, or you got to figure out another way.
So how did you get here to the conference today?
CCT, yeah.
Okay, so like, if it's, so today's Saturday, so that means on Thursday, you have to call and make your reservation?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you had set a reminder on your phone to do that on
Yeah,
Thursday?
yeah, so I got up, morning stuff, brushed my teeth, and then I just called I want to get in there as soon as possible, because the later you will call, it's, the more you wait.
Yeah. Well, that's really great. So would you say that you feel limited about getting around even though you can't drive?
No, I'm not limited. I'm limited compared to people who drive, sure. But I get there, it just takes me a little longer. And when you can get there on your own, it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
it's nice to not have to ask people all the time.
yes.
And you are getting there on your own. Yeah. All right. Let's get, come on. So Donald and Frank, if you could turn your attention to the screen now. Can you see it okay? All right. We're going to explore some of the pros and cons of each of these ways of getting around that have been mentioned in each of their stories. And Donald, would you read off the pros for us of getting around by walking, or if you're in a wheelchair, rolling?
Okay. Pros. Walking, rolling is great exercise. Works best in the city, but things are closer. Or you can walk safely to get to bus or train.
And Frank, would you read off some of the cons of
Sure.
walking or rolling?
Sure. You need to be able to cross intersections safely. Sometimes walking or rolling speed is not fast enough. Sometimes walking is too far. Balance or vision issues. Wheelchairs need curb cuts and clear sidewalks.
Yes.
So that is still a problem. When was the ADA passed, Mary Ferraro?
Oh, many years ago.
And it's still a problem 25 years later. It's incredible. You see a lot of construction still going on to put those curb cuts
Yes.
in your neighborhood. So that's still an issue. So Frank or Donald, whoever cares to respond, if you're going to walk somewhere that you don't know where you're going, what assistant do you use? What do you use to help you?
I tend to use maps.
Google Maps?
I use Google Maps for walking. I use iOS Maps for public transportation.
Oh, okay. So those are things that are both readily available on your phone,
Yeah,
all right, for free,
yeah.
right? Okay. I have to admit that I used Google Maps to walk from Jefferson Station to here today because I wasn't quite sure where the building was. What do you use to help you when you're not sure where you're going?
Well, on my phone, I have the Scepter app, so also I can tap on Scepter and let you know the distance to how you want to go also, and walking straight from there.
Okay,
And the
so
shortest route also.
yeah, SEPTA has a route planner app that's also free. It's a little more buried in the SEPTA stuff. You have to know how to find it, but you know how to find it, and you find it helpful.
Yes, very much.
Okay. Great.
I just say one other thing.
Yeah.
The reason I tend to use the Google Maps or iOS maps is I'm not always in the SEPTA area. And it doesn't matter where I am, I still want to be able to get around. And you could pull up public, like mine's defaulted to always look for public transportation first. And when I visiting family in the Poconos or New York, and I pull up how to get from A to B, it will show you that you have to get on the A, or you have to get on this or that and transfer. So that's more universal. That's why I use that, and I don't use the Scepter as much, because that's why.
You're
It's
going
just-
way beyond the
Yeah.
SEPTA region, which is fabulous, right? Love it.
Drew, can you just go back, can you go back to the last slide for a moment?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. This goes down, I have to issue it together. There is a con up there, there's a con that should be there,
What is that?
safety.
Safety.
Walking with a cane or if needed in a chair in the city makes people vulnerable. Donald's already been assaulted on the street and hospitalized. So this just makes people with TBI vulnerable. So
Yeah,
safety is an issue.
that is another issue when you're walking. You have to be aware of your surroundings, and especially crossing streets, and especially if you're in not so safe an area.
Right. It's late at night.
Late at night, right? That's another factor.
Yeah,
So
because what happened was I was going to the hospital and it was Philly daytime. And a street person came up to me and started hacking me some questions and hollering. I just walked to get away from him. Of course, I couldn't walk for so far, so I took a cane and started hitting me with the cane. And the hospital staff seen it, but they were so fearful to come outside. They seen he was bizarre. They pushed me to come inside and shut the door. He started to run inside the hospital. And then he ran away like that also. So sometimes it just happens at split a moment when you're doing the right thing and everything's fine. And you go into an area where you like, and sometimes this happens, people.
Yeah.
Just gotta be careful.
So because of those concerns, time of day, like late at night, or an area where you're not sure it's really safe, those might be sometimes where you would choose to use the shared ride as opposed to walking. Like it might be worth a couple of bucks to use the shared ride at that time. Donald, would you want to read off some of the pros to using the bus?
Works well in the city. Young and bus, good for those with balance, coordination issues. Can reduce fare card. Lowest cost of $1.25.
Thank you. And Frank, how about the cons?
Sure.
It can work in suburbs, not so much in rural areas. Not all buses are wheelchair friendly. It requires planning, organization, and waiting.
Yes.
Yes. I hear a resounding yes to
Confirmation.
that. So there's mention of this reduced fare card. I think this regular fare is $2.50, and with the reduced fare card, you can get it for $1.25. But how do you even get that? Let's see if we can show you an example of how you get that. Let's go to the SEPTA website, septakey.org, gives you information for riders with disabilities. And one of them here is, how can I apply for a SEPTA Key reduced fare card? And so you have to actually fill out a form. If you click on this link, it takes you to the reduced fare card program, and it tells you how to apply for a reduced fare card. And you have to actually set up a a sort of a virtual wallet on that card so that it always has some money in it. And then you just tap it when you get onto the bus, like you would for any other
And this is
card.
it right here.
And this is what it looks like, okay?
Yes, and it saves a whole lot of money on the SEPTA, so it does say.
Good. So you get half fare travel, and you get 2 free transfers on buses and SEPTA Metro. But you do, in order to first set this up, you do have to go down and apply in person, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, once you get to a certain step, you mail it in and then they come,
They call you, you gotta come in, because they're gonna put your picture on, is your picture on there?
Yes. You need to have some ID if you also.
yeah, some
yeah.
government, state ID or something,
Right, so where do you go to get that?
Market Street.
Yeah.
The Market Street SEPTA, so, see, it has Donald's picture on it, I hope everybody can see that, I'm giving it back to you, okay? So, it's a little bit involved, but once you set it up and learn how to use it, it works like a charm. So, let's go back to our other ways of getting around. Somebody got the hiccup. So how about using trains or subways? Donald, you want to read the pros here?
Most city subways, trains are wheelchair accessible and allow you to travel further out of the cities. SEPTA trip planning tells you exactly walk, bus, train to take.
Good, Frank, Hans?
Sure, requires organization, planning, and waiting. Not all subways and trains are wheelchair accessible.
Right. So let's take a look at that SEPTA trip planner. Can I have a show of hands in the room? How many people actually have used the SEPTA trip planner? A fair number of you. Excellent. So here's what it looks like for those of you who haven't used it yet. So you enter your exact starting location. We're going to put like 1101 Locust Street because that's where we are right now. And I'm going to say, how do I get to my house from there? So this is my address. Look, it knows it. How about that?
We're already down.
They're recording it.
And so if I wanted to go home right now, it's telling me that I should leave by 1:44 p.m. and I should go and catch the Warminster line to Elkins Park. So it's really pretty smart, the app. And it actually shows you on the map exactly how that train is going to take me home. And then I have to do a little bit of walking. Let's see, I think if I click on this, yeah, it gives you the detail here. So I have to walk a half a mile, which is going to take me 10 minutes to Jefferson Station. And then I catch the West Trenton line and that's going to take me to Elkins Park. Okay, so, and it's only 7 minutes to walk from Elkins Park to my house. So that's pretty cool. Huh? So it's a really cool app, and I use it all the time. I'm glad so many of you are using it because it's, again, free. Okay, so what about using ride shares or cabs or hacks? Yeah, question here.
Should we just go back? Yeah, I'm sorry, just because you didn't mention Amtrak.
I did not mention Amtrak.
But you do have, so if somebody wants to travel by Amtrak, if you get a ticket online, it will ask, are you a person with disability? And if they do, they'll arrange to have somebody meet you at the train station, take you down early. So they will be very preventative measures to keep people safe.
That's incredible.
Only at certain stops.
Only at certain stops.
Here in
okay,
Philadelphia.
Like
Yeah, in Philadelphia, they have to.
30th Street.
Yes.
Yeah. That's good to know. Thank you for sharing. So how about these ride shares and cabs and hacks? What kind of pros do we have here? Frank, you want to read those on?
Sure. You have door-to-door service. You can easily set up right on app. Don't have to use cash, even for tip. Available anytime, day or night. Usually very little wait time.
Okay, and how about the cons? Donald?
Higher costs, have to be careful with tax, only use known entities. Safe ride must be tied to a credit card.
Yeah, so, do you want to comment on those hacks? What do you have to look out for cabs that are not like the yellow cab or, some other kind of standard cab?
Well, you have to be careful, once again, you have to know who cab you're getting into, because sometimes you don't know the person doesn't know you. And it's a really eerie feeling to get someplace with somebody you don't know in that sense. And also you can bargain a price with them sometimes. It depends on where you're going also to figure it out. But usually I stay away from them also. If I don't know the person, I feel uncomfortable, I usually just don't ride them all because I just don't feel comfortable with those situations.
And, most people have these apps on their phone already. Yeah.
Is that what hack's entitled? Somebody hacking into you and
No, that's not what that means. So the hack is really considered a non-legal
Like a distant cab.
cab.
Yeah, like
not a non-legal cab?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that's kind of slang that we use,
Yeah,
right?
like a distant cab, something like that also.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna automatically take you for a ride, you just gotta pay them like that.
Okay.
A lot of times in certain stores, you see people leaving the store, they give you a ride, a hack or something like that, where to go. You bargain out a price with them,
All
but
right.
you don't know the individuals, so you feel comfortable doing that.
So you pay them up front and they just like, all right.
They take you for a ride.
Yeah.
How many people have the Uber or Lyft app on your phones? Raise your hand. Almost everybody does, okay? And Frank, how do you decide which one to use?
It's really easy price checking, and I go with the cheaper one.
There you go. Heard it from Frank. I do the same thing, and believe it or not, I do a lot of travel internationally, and from Philadelphia Airport to my house, if I don't take the train, there's always a price difference in Lyft, and it's significant. It's often $10 or $15 difference, so I always check them both as well. Yeah. Okay.
Does that mean it's not always the same one? One time's one cheaper, one time another cheaper?
Exactly,
Yeah.
and nobody can figure it out, so you can't always just go to one, you always have to check both to get the best price. But it's not hard to do that. So, Donald, would you read us the pros on using SEPTA Access paratransit?
Yes. Door-to-door service eliminates staying multiple forms of transportation. Maximum fare $5. Wheelchair accessible vans.
What are the cons, Frank?
You have to set up interview and fill out forms to get approved. You have to do that for everything, though.
Yeah.
You must renew every 4 years. You must arrange ride 3 days in advance. And pickup window is 20 minutes before or 20 minutes after, whatever the scheduled time is. So you can't call, where's my trip? If it's set for 7 at 7:10, because they're not going to say it's late until after 7:20. So you kind of have to give yourself leeway when you're using these forms of transportation.
Have they ever not shown up for you after scheduling this
Once.
3 days in a row in advance?
Yeah, once. And you got to think on your feet.
Yeah,
You took a lift or I didn't go, the end.
but you still think it's worth using?
Yeah,
Okay, so in other words, that's not a frequent occurrence.
yeah, that was an outlier, I think.
Okay. So, here's on the SEPTA website where you have to go to get to, the application for paratransit. And, just to note that SEPTA rebranded this service, on July 1. It now is officially known as SEPTA Access. But you won't see that, the vans all still say CCT on them, okay? So don't be, confused about that. And it is really a great program, as Frank described earlier. Runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Yeah,
What does ADA stand for?
and that's the Americans with Disabilities Act, which
Okay.
is, which, requires that service be provided for people who can't use the regular bus or regular train line, okay? In other words, it's a reasonable accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act to provide this SEPTA paratransit service. Yeah.
What's the geographic area that it covers?
So there's the million-dollar question. So it covers Philadelphia and suburban counties, okay? And beyond that, I'm not quite sure if they connect with anything. Do you know, Frank?
From what I remember, because I've moved a few times, still staying in the SEPTA area, you have to be within, I believe, a half mile of a stop. Within a mile or a half mile, I don't remember the exact
Of a
number,
regular bus or
of a
train
regular
stop.
bus or train stop.
Really?
Yeah. So don't hold me to that because I have a brain injury. Can't remember. It's been a while. It's been a while since I had to apply.
So here is the application, and you can see now the forms are branded SEPTA Access now. So, but you do have to fill out like a lot of information, mail it in, and then like Frank said, they're going to call you down. It's just like the reduced fare card. They're going to call you for an in-person interview. And you do, I think there is a section on here that you have to get filled out by your physician, is that right?
Unless you have like you're already on disability or you have some form of assistance that you could show as proof.
Mhm, mhm. So, yeah, but otherwise they're asking for your permission to have your healthcare professional, verify that there's this functional verification form that your doctor would fill out. So it's a more involved process, but once you get it, you have it for 4 years, and then you just have to renew, which is not quite as critical. You need a little hand there. Here we go. Anything to help.
I have a slightly less positive view of this. I work at a clinic down in the Center City where we have a lot of people relying on this. We have started keeping stats. They had about a 25% failure rate.
Wow,
Showing up.
so Frank's really doing well
Yes.
with his very small percentage of failure. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So, and is that, do you have any idea why that is?
No.
Okay. So let's look at the next one, which is medical transportation. So this is an alternative to paratransit if it's for a medical appointment, okay? So I don't know whether yours would be considered medical appointments.
Yes.
So they might be able to use Medicaid transportation. So I'll read these pros and cons. It can be used for therapy or doctor's appointments. It is door to door, just like the paratransit, and they can provide wheelchair access. So the cons are, it depends on your medical insurance. It really only works if you're on Medicaid or on the Medicaid waiver, and it's limited to medical appointments. So you can't use it for shopping, and paratransit you can literally use for anything. You could use it to go to the comedy club. You could use it to go to your church. It doesn't have any limits, but the medical transportation does have limits. And let's take a look at what you have to do to get to use that. Yeah.
What's a Medicaid waiver?
Oh, so good question. So if you qualify for medical assistance, there is a federal state shared program that you may be able to get services from. It's called Community Health Choices, and it's funded by the money that would have normally gone to fund a nursing home placement, but who wants to live in a nursing home? So they kind of waive that requirement, and they let you spend the money on home and community-based service. So it's a really good program. You have to qualify for medical assistance to be eligible though. Okay. So if you are on either medical assistance or the Medicaid waiver program, you can you can get this transportation program, medical assistance transportation. And there's the website with all these websites, by the way, are on your handouts. Did everybody get one? Yep. Okay. So you don't have to write them down. They're there for you if you want to apply for any of these things. And you go to the website and they'll walk you through how to do that step by step. Okay, so let's move on. We're running low on time here, but we're doing okay. I see you. So I want to ask both Donald and Frank how you made your decision about where you want to live. You could have decided to live in a rural area. You could have decided to live in the suburban area or in the city. Okay, so each has its pros and cons. You know, some people make their decisions based on where they want to be in proximity to their family and friends. Others make their decisions about where they want to be in proximity to work or volunteer work, except for Frank, who does all his stuff online. And you know, if you want to consider changing after you have a brain injury, it's going to take a lot of learning to learn a new place, and you know that's a consideration too. So I want to ask each of you, you know, how did you decide where you're living now? What were the things that you considered in making your decisions?
I've always been of the mindset that I want to be able to do for me as much as I can.
So what did that mean?
And I lived in a very rural area. And if I wanted to get anywhere or go anywhere, I needed someone to bring me there. And that wasn't going to work.
You didn't like that.
That can't happen.
So you
So,
choose
now-
to live
Yeah.
more in a
Suburban, yeah.
city area. Donald, what were your considerations?
I like the fact of being more independent and not having to rely on somebody to get around. So I can do a lot of walking wherever I can catch transportation too, because transportation is very good in Philadelphia to get you where you want to go. And also, in the area we live in, it's so congested. Even if you had a car, it'd be so congested to try to park. And South Philadelphia is really getting congested. So finding a place to park would be difficult. So we don't have a car either. We can always rent a car, we need one, but nevertheless, that's a now, we don't need a car for that. That's very cool, also to say.
Cool. Okay, so you have all of these resources on your handouts. There's a couple that we haven't reviewed, but I want to make sure we have time for questions. So the last two we haven't reviewed. I'll tell you what's on them. The accessible housing is how to find accessible housing. There's a website that you can just key in the area you want to live in. It'll show you what apartments or homes are available for rent and what features they have. What are the handicap accessible features? What is the proximity to transportation? It'll show you all of that on this website about accessible housing. And then finding things to do. I just have to share this one with you because it's so cool. In case your dance card is not fully subscribed, you might want to consider taking some classes. So here's the Mount Airy Learning Tree, which is of course more in Northwest Philadelphia, but there's classes that you can go to for all kinds of things. You can learn how to write essays or how to practice mindfulness or how to play the ukulele or intro to improv comedy.
What?
Really? Done.
Mystery shopping, get paid to shop.
Playing the piano, how to make fused glass picture frames. I mean, this is an incredible resource, and there's one in your community too. It may not be called Mount Airy Learning Tree, but it's under adult basic education, and it's probably on online, just like I love Mount Airy Learning Tree because I used to work at Moss Rehab, and that was our neck of the woods. And so we always use this to help people figure out what it is that you want to do in life. And so you can use the transportation methods we've discussed today to get to these courses if they're at a physical location. So I just had to share that with you before we open it up for questions, which we are now doing. So, although you've already been asking them all along, but do you have other comments or questions that you would like, especially this chance to ask our two co-presenters who are doing the things they want to do in life, even without driving? Yeah.
How do you get the confidence? I mean, it's just so impressive to hear both of you say, "Oh, just do this and do this." I mean, how do you develop that sense of confidence when it's so difficult for a lot of people?
Well, with me personally, I do what's called Tai Chi. And Tai Chi actually tells you to breathe, relax, and stay focused. And I do that before I leave the house a lot of times. And deep breathing is staying relaxed and then determine what's going to happen. Make a plan also, too. It's a good idea also. I can stay by my plan, too, what I'm going to do for that day.
Right, do you have anything to add to that?
I do a lot of planning. I do a lot of planning so to avoid making any mistakes when I'm out. And really, confidence, I'm still waiting for that. So you gotta fake it till you make it. And I just go by that.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, now just eventually, well, I'm very comfortable now booking something with Access, SEPTA, or whatever it's called, and or what have you, or taking multiple forms of transportation.
I'm really going to go out on a limb here and ask Frank, did your rehab help you at all with developing those planning and organization skills?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, heck yeah.
Thank God, Mary Ferraro.
Of course.
I am his boss, but I did not. All right, there was a question over here. Yeah, Gregory.
Yeah, okay, so I've been through a lot, including a stroke that left me completely paralyzed on the left side. And right now I'm trying to relocate into another house that's right down the street from her, and move my stuff there and trying to get back and forth. I do walk. I don't drive, I walk back and forth, but I hate walking so much back and forth. What I really want is just some kind of device, like a trike, for example, with 3 wheels that I could just ride down the sidewalk. I don't even want to ride in the street, but I need somebody to evaluate me. I know they make scooters. I don't want a scooter for a couple reasons. One, a medical company, the nice thing was insurance would pay for a scooter. But the problem is when I get to her house, I can't get it in and I'd have to lift it up the steps. 2, for the future, if I get more mobile, I won't fit in the community. And there's a 3rd reason. There's another, I don't think I'll fit in. I can't remember. There's a 3rd reason I think a scooter is a really bad idea that I had planned to tell you guys if I asked this question, but I'd have to try to remember it. In any case, I don't think a scooter is a good idea, but I'm trying to figure out if anyone has any advice on what would be good. I don't even know if I could even learn to ride an electric bike. I think electric could be good because then I don't have to worry about pedaling. It might make it easier to just kind of coast. But like my family physician recommended something called a mobility evaluation at Moss. And I'm just curious if anyone has any advice on if they think a mobility evaluation is the right thing, and if they have any advice on exactly what I might look into for just going down the sidewalk, and if they think that's a good idea for the future. Any advice on this situation?
Yeah, so the mobility evaluation, whether it's for driving a car or riding a bike, is the way to go, because you can, what they do is they evaluate you in the context of what you want to do. So like if it's riding down the sidewalk on an adapted bike of some kind, they'll evaluate you doing that and see whether you're safe doing it.
Okay.
Mary Ferraro, would you add anything else to
No,
that?
no.
So, I mean, that's exactly what rehab is supposed to do, at least. You were going to add to that?
No, I have
Oh.
no comments.
Okay. Anybody else have experience with any of
One
the
more thing.
issues
Sorry.
Gregory's?
I
Yeah,
just
go on.
wanted to add, if anybody knows of something, there's one thing she found in addition to electric trikes, in particular devices. There's something she found on, I guess, on the internet called a Dash Moto. And if anybody heard of that and knows anything about them, I'm just throwing it out there. because it's something we're curious about, if anybody knows anything about particular devices, and if they've tried any particular devices that they think are good for people who have balance issues. Like, I know the mobility evaluation is a good thing they can try, but they might not have trikes and dash motos and all the different devices to actually test them out. And so if anyone has any particular experience with particular devices, you know, like a dash moto or a trike or any thoughts on that, but I understand that you might not have tested the stuff, but it's just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, but they all sound like good ideas for evaluation to see if they would work for you, you know? So, and I think you could bring that up to the folks at the mobility evaluation in advance, so that if they needed to get a piece of equipment to trial you on, they might be able to do that. Yeah. Cool.
No, I'm fine.
Yeah. Is it Richard?
Victor.
Victor.
No, I'm
I can't
okay.
read that part.
I'm okay. Thank you.
You're okay. All right. Other comments or questions?